All right, we are live. Hopefully sound is good. Let's see here. And everything is working on y'all's end. Wait for mine to catch up. Just a second here. Wait for some people to join in. It's Wednesday, October 22nd. Halloween's just around the corner. Is working on y'all's end. Yep. Wait for mine to catch up. Volume seems good. Even though it's just me in here talking to myself at the moment. That's okay. That's okay. All right. So, guess we could wait just a minute. So if you are watching this as a VOD, or if there actually is someone here and my notification hasn't caught up yet to tell me what you're looking at, this is a sound design session for Ableton that I use. The cover picture is a picture of my modular. I can probably squeeze that in here as a source if we need to refer to that. Actually, maybe I should get that ready. See if we can add an image. Create new, yeah, let's call it modular. Say okay, yeah. Image file, browse, there we go. Sorry about that. It's very large right now. Let's just get this into a reasonable size here. Oops. Whoops. That's not what we wanted. Grabbed the wrong window. Okay. So, you can look at this here. This is the modular patch that I've sampled here. If you look at these longer waveforms here, these are the uncut, well, I mean, they're a little bit cut up, but unaltered. The cuts are, you know, it's digital audio workstation. The cuts are non-destructive, so I can recover the actual files, and we can look at those in a minute too. But this is the patch that I'm sampling here. I don't know how well you can see that. But it's a pretty basic patch actually. So if you have by chance read my Introduction to Subtractive Synthesis, How to Synth guide, talk about this concept in there of the minimum viable synthesizer. By that I just mean the minimum collection of pieces, core synthesis pieces that you can put together to make a reasonable synthesizer that you can use for, you know, something more complex than just a simple drone synth, or, you know, something that just makes one sound. Something that you can actually make a variety of sounds on. And so the minimum viable synthesizer in terms of subtractive, it's different for other synthesis types. Like next week, for example, we'll be doing Intro to FM, and the minimum viable synthesizer there is, well, it's really even just one operator, but two operators is essentially a full-blown synthesizer. It's a little more complex in the subtractive / analog or virtual analog world. And there, you basically need, in my opinion, you need 5 pieces to make a minimum viable synthesizer, and that's what we have here. I think we actually used more than that number of modules, but mostly just because there's some utility modules mixed in here. I'm looking at the actual thing rather than the photograph. But okay, so real quick, just to cover this patch, this is the oscillator here. I don't know if you can even, I guess you can maybe see my mouse on there. If you look at the middle of this patch here, this module that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in. There's like on the left hand side there's the Benjalin and then the panharmonium, and it's the one next to that. That's the oscillator. So you get an oscillator that goes into an SEM style filter, and then it goes into an amplifier module. That's again, this is like the most basic minimum viable synthesizer you can create. And then that is controlled by this ornament and crime above, right directly above the oscillator is providing, the left side is providing an ADSR envelope, and the right side is providing a not a UFO, an LFO, just a simple triangle LFO. And that's molted out. Right now it's currently molted into, the LFO goes into both the filter and the pulse width modulation of the oscillator. So the oscillator is doing a square wave or pulse wave. And LFO is moving that pulse width. And then the envelope goes to both the filter and the amplifier. But yeah, so one oscillator, one filter, one amplifier, one LFO, one envelope. That is your minimum viable synthesizer. So I actually made this patch to create some... I was going to make a video on to supplement that lesson. Actually, was my initial purpose for this patch, was just going to make a short video to show how much variety that you could get out of this sort of relatively basic setup. I mean, I know it's kind of silly to say basic setup when you're looking at $7,000 with a modular, but the collection of modules that I actually used here is, it's like 5 modules. Even if you like, the Benjalin is patched in, but it's literally just providing gates, just providing essentially a random gate function. So it just turns gate on and off every, instead of doing it every beat, it does it, every other beat, skips some beats here, leaves it high on some beats and low on others. And that triggers the envelope. And then there's the only pitch that's in here is I currently have it pitched an octave down, and that's because, again, I'm sampling this for sound design, exactly what we're talking about here. When I decided to sample it, I was just like, okay, I just want a C pitch, and we'll get into that a little bit. But anyway, so this is what we're working with today. I'm going to turn this off for now, but if anyone has questions later, we can pop it back up and look at it again. That's also the thumbnail, and I can post it on social media if people want to get a closer look at it or whatever, but I'm going to turn that off for now. Okay, and let me pop up live. Excuse me. Hey, Swarm. How's it going? Okay, so here is the live session that I'm using. It's just a few tracks. Some of them are even not doing anything. Just remove that. Okay, so this top audio track here is just a collection of the stuff that I've done. Track 2 here is the one that I am using for, right now it's this is where my sort of my workspace, I guess is what you would call it. The samples that I want to mangle and process, is I'm putting those on 2, and then recording them up here. That's the plan here anyway. So this session I put together last week just because I had put this patch together and was listening to it and was like, oh, that actually sounds pretty good. And again, my point when I made it was to make some example patches for to document to go with the subtractive basics lesson 1, just some video content to supplement it. But hey, it's like, hey, this sounds pretty good. So, which of course was the point, was to show that you can actually do a lot with not that much. So let's listen to this. Actually, this is, so the original patch, right now, like I said, this is a square wave patch that's like an octave down. And I made that one after I decided to make this one, or after I made this one. The original patch was just a saw wave patch with a little less modulation. It didn't have any modulation on the oscillator, just on the filter, but basically the same otherwise. LFO and envelope both do the filter. Envelope does both the filter and the amplifier, and there was just no modulation on the oscillator at all. So this is kind of what I started with that kind of inspired this. This is all one pitch. It's like C3 or C2. And the filter's moving, envelope's moving. And I made a bunch of short sweeps, as you can hear here. And then the second track, similar, but it's a square wave. And again, it's got some additional modulation. Pulse width modulation is going on as well. But so these are they're relatively interesting sounds, but they're also fairly basic. Obviously, anyone that's been synthing for a while has heard and produced many sounds just like this. But yeah, so once I had those, I decided to cut them up and do some sampling fun with them, and that's what you see here. These little ones here, the mono, I recorded this in mono. All the samples are in stereo because of the stereo processing on them, so they go to stereo. You can collapse them back to mono if you want to. If you like sampling in mono, that's really kind of a matter of preference. But yeah, so before we get into the nitty-gritty sort of techniques, I did want to talk just a little bit here about... oh yeah, I like it. I think that you should definitely do an all... Hey Justin, how's it going, man? Swarm, I think you should definitely do an all monotron track. I 100% co-sign this plan. I think that is a fine idea. I'm a big believer in doing a lot with a little, even though I have a lot of crap. It's kind of, I know it seems probably sort of ironic. Hold on, we got a little explosion. Got to open a can here. I don't know how loud that's going to be on microphone. Sorry about that. Got to have water though. Okay, sampling, of course, is it's obviously a huge topic, huge technique and tool and approach even. It sort of transcends any of, calling it a technique or a tool. It really is an approach to music making. It's not to confuse the matter too much, but it's a very granular approach. You can sample microscopic little bits of sound and use those all the way up to full songs. Obviously, it just depends on what your approach to sampling is and what you're hoping to get out of it. This, of course, like as the title says, is sampling for sound design. And so what we're looking for here is to produce raw materials that can then be manipulated and turned into more interesting things inside the sampler or inside the sample environment. In this case, of course, that's the DAW. These samples that we are making could be used conceivably anywhere. You could certainly, these are all pretty short in this case, so they could be imported into a drum machine, even like a vintage synthesizer or sampler that has just a few megabytes of sample memory could probably work with these. All the way up to another DAW, this DAW obviously, drum racks, whatever. But when you are sampling, that is something that you have to keep in mind. How do you intend this to be used? There's really so I have and again, this is sampling for sound design, but I did want to sort of get into just a little bit of the larger philosophy. I have like sort of a 4-point approach, question, sort of 4 things I keep in mind, the 4 questions I keep in mind when I'm doing sampling. And it's, you could really consider these in any order. They sort of make a little, if you imagine a circular diagram where each one is like around the circle and kind of points to the next one. There's 4 things, or what are you sampling? What are you doing to what you've sampled? what are you going to use it for, and what do you use it with. So what do you use it with is like the platform. Like if I'm making these, for example, if I had a old Casio sampling drum machine and I'm glad that the can got some good room reverb. This room is very bright. It's all hard surfaces, apart from a little bit of furniture in it, and even the furniture, there's just not very much in here in this room, considering. So yeah, a lot of reflections in here. I'm actually moving in the next month, and touch wood if everything works out, and so I should have different setup, maybe a little more audio friendly here shortly. Okay, yeah. So what am I going to use it with? Right. So if I'm sampling for like a vintage Casio sampling drum machine, for example, if I'm producing samples for that, I got to keep them very short. I probably would want to keep in mind that a lot of the high frequency information is going to get lost or turned into just an aliased mess, things like that. Versus if I'm sampling into an Electron machine or whatever, going to transfer these to an Electron machine. If I was going to put in the original Digitac, for example, I would want to make all the samples mono. Just the point is, just you got to think about where the samples are going to be used. If you're making a sample pack, you might want to make things a little more generic. Versus if you're making something specifically for a track that you already is in progress, and you have exactly what it's for, exactly what hole it's going to go in, and you're trying to produce something to fit that specific hole. It's going to be a different approach than if you were just like, hey, let's crank out 30 sweeps for a sample pack, which is what this ended up being. So that's what are you going to use it for? What's it for? And then so what do you sample and what do you do to it? Those are the other two big questions. Obviously, you can sample just about anything. I think if you are some things that I have sampled in the past and continue to sample. I love sampling toy instruments. I like sampling broken instruments or instruments that I don't really know how to play. I like sampling anything I can hit. Like impact samples are a huge part of my sample library. I keep a couple of drumsticks around. They're actually packed up right now just because of the way I'm living at the moment. But I usually have, like, right next to me a set of drumsticks. Also, anything else, like anything that, if you are getting into sampling, you got to develop this sort of faculty to hear things and go, oh, that would make a good sample. And it's kind of nice that we all carry these things all the time. This is such a great sampling tool. If you are not pulling your phone out and hitting record, if you're interested in sampling and trying to create samples for your music, for a sample library, for whatever, you should be recording crap with this all the time. Like every chance you get, anytime you're out and hear a weird noise, you should stick your phone in front of it, make a voice note, and for later use in sampling and sample mangling. It is a incredibly, incredibly powerful tool. Yeah, definitely, Justin. It's good questions, Justin. So until recently, I actually did most of my non-creative sampling work, which is to say the cleanup stuff, truncating stuff and getting all the silence out. I used Audacity. I am a long-time Audacity user. I've used it professionally, for giant professional projects, even since the early aughts. But it doesn't want to open on my new computer. I upgraded my Mac because my son wanted a computer, and the new ones had more memory than the old ones for the same price. So I just bought a new one and basically handed my old one down to him. For whatever reason, Audacity worked fine on the 8 gig Mac that I had, won't open on the 16 gig Mac that I have. No idea why. So until that gets itself sorted out, I'm mostly using Ableton. I have been using something called OCEN Audio, OCEN Audio, for that cleanup stuff, and making some wavetables, which is another thing I'll probably stream about soon. But yeah, for this iteration, I will actually be using OCEN Audio to normalize everything to 0. Like, you can do that in Ableton, but it's just easier, and something that has a dedicated normalize function where you just get it to roughly where you want it, and then you just say go ahead and normalize it to 0 from there. But yeah, I do know what you're saying about like the Audacity thing, or not Audacity, the Reaper thing for Morphogene reels. That's one actually advantage of Ocean Audio is it can export with markers, which Audacity couldn't do as of the last time I checked anyway. I have not experimented with that yet, but that is an excellent point of when I say like, what are you using it for? Like if I'm creating something for Audacity, it is going to be a very different process and output than if I'm creating something for, like this, that's going to become a sample pack. Okay, with that, enough of that. Let's talk a little bit more, and then here's some of these samples. So up here you have these little groups. I'm sure you can kind of see how these are grouped together. And they're also here. We can zoom in. They're also labeled AOS and then A1, A2, A3, A4, A5. So basically it's original sample, and those are all mono, again, because I sampled this in mono. And then the variations on that sample. 5 variations on each. And this is a technique that I will do to just crank out a bunch of interesting samples. Just start working with something and make quick variations of it, and then you kind of go through them later and decide what's good. These actually were a little more, maybe slightly more deliberate than that. Like this is everything I generated you see up here, which is not necessarily the way I generally do it, but maybe I was just on a roll. I don't know. Really what it was is I only saved things when I got something I liked. So depending on what kind of tools you have, it is important to I don't know what, I know the people I'm talking to in here, Swarm and Justin, have gear, have experience, etc., and are looking for a different perspective. But if you're new and watching this and you're like, well, I don't have Ableton, or I don't have, you don't need any of that. You should just use whatever you've got. Audacity is free. Ocean Audio, that other one I was talking about, is free. Maybe next week or next time I do one of these, I'll pull up Ocean Audio and show what it can do. But the point is, you should just use what you have. Reaper is $70 for a license, but it's free to download, and I think it's just Nagware if you don't want to pay for it. And I've not had much luck with Reaper, but I know people, it's a professional level DAW that's essentially free. So, there's no lack of tools, I guess is what I'm saying. Don't be stopped by a perceived lack of tools. You don't need to have Ableton Live, I know, is a $750 program for the suite version. You don't need that. If you got it, great. But if you only have the light version, which comes free with a bunch of hardware, that's fine. You can just get some free plugins to fill in the gaps of what you don't have and do the exact same techniques here, just with some different plugins. I'm actually using all built-in plugins. Excuse me. Swarm, I'm going to do a wavetable. I got super into making wavetables. I've made a ton of them for Pigments. That is a thing I'm going to be streaming about in the near future, so you can stay tuned for that. Anyway, yeah. Yeah, right. The Mac has GarageBand built in, and you can do a ton in that. So, yeah, so what I did here, you can probably see that these have little chunks taken out of them, and those chunks are literally what you see here. Like, that's one, and that's one, and that's one, and that's one, and that's one. And all I did is I just listened to these tracks, just like we were doing earlier, and pulled out some interesting synths. So for example, let's just do this now. Let's show and not tell, right? Okay, so we got that. Alt-E to separate that out. Okay. Zip this in so there's not a big pause at the beginning. Okay, and now I've already got, look, there's actually already a little we already had a sample on here, but let's go ahead and I'm going to move that one back to here. As I recall, that's one I did sample it and then ended up being like, I don't really love that. So let's just take this back here to about there. Some of this. Turn this off. Okay, so that's what we have. All right, so in this technique, again, just to be 100% clear what I did here and how you might apply this, I let this run for, it's about 3 minutes, okay? So I sampled about 3 minutes of the modular synthesizer, just making some sweep sounds, and then cut small sections out, interesting individual sweeps. And they weren't, again, there's not like a wild amount of variation. It's literally the same thing happening throughout. So I just found an interesting spot. I guess the point I'm trying to make here is don't obsess over this part. We are, after all, going to apply a bunch of processing and screw things up a bunch to make them sound different. Oh, actually, you know what? Before we get into the technique, let's listen to what I actually created already. Okay, so what we're going to hear here is, turn the loop braces on, we're going to hear a sample and then 5 variations of it. And you can just kind of see how much, and those variations sort of vary from an enhancement, just adding stereo and maybe a little saturation and some compression to kind of make it sound bigger, to ones that you'll recognize them, but you'll definitely be like, oh, okay, that's wild. That's definitely like a pretty far mangling. So yeah, so without further ado, let's just listen to these 30-some samples. This will take I'm going to try not to talk during this. We're just going to play them. And so those last two are like the more like enhancements. Again, the last one's just an enhancement. Okay. And this is the result. So those 30-some samples, that was probably the result of 2 or 3 hours of me screwing around with these. And that includes like basically from the time that I decided, oh, I should record some of these and play with them until the time I was done. So definitely some of that was, if I had sat down and with the idea in mind of specifically what I was going to do and, okay, I'm going to produce 30 variations of this and just be done, I probably could have cranked that out in, 90 minutes or whatever. But I was having fun and exploring, so it was probably more like twice that, 3 hours or 3.5 hours maybe. Okay, so these are all the result of pretty similar processes. That's the other thing, too, is this is an impossibly deep topic. I've been playing with samples longer even than I have been playing with synthesizers. Sampling was sort of my first sound design love. I was really into sampling it's kind of what got me into music. Synthesizers kind of came later, not much later, and I got super into them as well. But from the very beginning, I was super into manipulating digital audio, and even when back in the day when that meant reversing samples and maybe adding like a cheap delay effect was like as good as it got processing wise. So sorry, I glanced at the chat and got derailed there. And so I've been developing techniques over the years. The techniques you use are going to be dependent, obviously, to some degree on what you're using. If you were doing this, for example, in a more hardware-based setup, you might have something, a sampler on one end, a bunch of pedals or outboard gear of various sorts in between, and then recording into a digital recorder on the other end. Here, what I am doing is I've got effects racks in Ableton that when I was doing this, when I started doing this, I really didn't have any intent other than like, oh, this is fun, I should crank out some samples, maybe I'll release a sample pack. And then I was like, oh, what am I going to stream about? And I thought, oh, that might make a good stream, and everyone seemed into it. So I ended up doing the stream, but initially the plan was just to crank some of these out and maybe release a sample pack of them. I wasn't really intending on doing instruction with them, or I would have. The point I'm trying to make here, I would have saved all the racks that I did, and instead this is just one from one of the last things that I tried out that is currently turned off, but I will save this or turn it back on, and then let's solo this track. Okay. So that you can see that's pretty big difference there. So this is the loop brace in Ableton Live. This is pretty handy when you are trying to do something like this, for example, and wanting to I've got it set way too long, of course. There we go. This single bar. We'll open it up. The reason I set it wider is because I might want to. All right, now I got to stop it. I can't think while it's going. I might want something with a longer tail, for example. Like this one makes a little bit of a longer tail, but I guess not long enough to matter. But if something had a long decay, then I would want to move that loop brace, obviously. But as it is, so I'll just like move this around. So you're just playing with stuff until you find something that sounds good. It sounds interesting. And again, because all right, let's just say we like that. I don't know if y'all like that or not. So what I do is, you can also do this in real time. I know some people like to, it really just depends on what you're trying to end up with. So what I'm going to show you here is we're going to enable this for record, stretch this brace out just a little bit, and then we will hit record on here. Look at that. So now we have one of our variations created here. And we can go back here and we can save this rack. No, not as a default preset. Let's just save it as a, is that, yep. All right, so we'll save that as Squirrel Squasher. I couldn't tell you why. It's kind of squashing it. It's kind of squirrely, so Squirrel Squasher, right? Yeah. This is how I come up with these brilliant names. I mean, I do give a lot of thought to the names of, say, my tracks, but sometimes not so much to, you know, internal things. Okay, so I'm going to delete all this stuff out of the thing here, so we can return to that one later if we want to. We have our squirrel squasher here. What is this? Oh, okay, that's just delete. That's my channel strip. Let's just go ahead and delete that. Yep, move to trash. Okay, so I also, what are you doing? I keep a tuner at the end so that you can, so you see this is tuned to C, and then that way if whatever I'm doing to the thing takes it, you know, like, it's not so much that it takes it out of tune. If it puts it to a different distinct pitch, then I know I might want to tweak that or at least make a note. So I mentioned that when, you know, you are sampling, you got to think about what your audience is, you know, whether audience in this case a lot of times just means just you. Like if you're only ever creating things for yourself, then you're asking yourself, is this for something specific? So if I was making something for a specific track that was already in progress, let's say it's in the key of E minor because it's a guitar-based song, not that you have to be in guitar based to play E minor, but it's a good guitar key because it's like kind of the default. You're in E minor, so it probably makes sense then to make your sample in E minor, maybe even for the specific pitch that you intended to play at, versus if you're just creating stuff to use in the future, it frequently makes sense to record it in C, just at a pitch of C, kind of a middle-ish C, not too low and not too high, so you can pitch it up and pitch it down. Especially with these days, a lot of the you know, time stretching, pitch stretching capabilities of digital audio workstations and stuff are pretty powerful. You might be able to get several octaves of use out of a single sample. If you're creating multi-samples, for example, for something, then that is also a different process. I'm not going to go into any of that. And first of all, it's not something I do very often. But second of all, that's its own whole topic for sure. But yeah, so these are all just C. And I want to keep them close to C, or at least note if they go wildly out of that, because you know, when I'm going to use them in the future, what are they going to be used for? Oh, I see them in my presets. Burp. Yeah, we can just, anyway. All right, so what are they going to be used for? And that kind of determines, let's try this. So this is like a physical modeling kind of device, I want to say. Let's just see what this is doing here. Oh, look at that. And so, yeah, another way to do this would be to record, you know, to lay this out rather than having it once on here. You just have it like, I could put it in like a sampler or simpler device and just have it play on a loop and then record the entire output and then cut up the output. That is definitely one way to do it. It's the way I have done it in the past. For this kind of thing, in part for what I'm trying to show you all, and also just because what I'm hoping to come out with here is not a bunch more work later, but a semi-finished product that I can then clean up and put out. So I'd rather like screw around on a loop until I find something I actually know I want to keep, and then keep that rather than producing a bunch of work for myself later, basically. All right, so this is still in C. Let's see, now we're getting into something interesting here. And it's good to have the tuner around. You can see the pitch is fluctuating a bit, but it's ending up, it's still where we want it. It's not so far changing pitch that it's like going to be out of tune. It might be a little tricky for sure, but depending on what you're trying to use it for, but you can see even like our pure output is still mostly in tune. It's just alright, that's kind of interesting. Now what else can we mess this up with? And so this is literally what I do, is I just will pull different effects in and see what they sound like. See if they add anything interesting. There we go. It changes things quite a bit, doesn't it? Let's see if we can maybe get a compressor in there to tame this just a little bit. So now it's turned into this almost like guitar thing. Alright, that's pretty interesting. So let's get rid of that. And I don't worry too much about what the volume of these is, because you can obviously tweak these in Ableton. Like, we'll just make this louder. So if you lose a bunch of volume while you're sampling, that's okay. You can just tweak it later. Like, you can also, for example, normalize in Audacity or whatever. Yep, so let's go back to this. And we'll save this. This is not. Oh, this one. Guitarizer. Kind of turns it into a faintly guitar-like sound, right? Cool. All right. Interesting. So, if anyone has any suggestions, we can definitely do this. Yeah, for sure. So multi-sampling, the one thing I found it useful for is if you come up with like a cool mono synth patch that you think would make a good pad, you can multi-sample the mono synth and then use it as a pad. I've definitely done a little bit of that. The times that I've used multi-sampling the most has been with the MPC, because it's got an auto sampler, so I can just plug it into a sample source that uses MIDI and then get my multi-samples set up for me. Super easy, maps them across the keyboard, does all the not very interesting work that's required. Yeah, so let me know. I'm gonna keep messing with this. Let's try this dynamic tube preset in here. Bunch of processing. Alright, so that just sort of giving it a little beef. Kind of interesting. And so again, this is all about experimentation. I'm really not looking for anything in particular here, other than cool noises. It's kind of interesting, right? Yeah, and so our tuner's definitely is like a little freaked out, but it seems like it's mostly still in tune. I wonder if we can like get an interesting, seems like a saturator on the other side of that could make that a little more interesting. Yeah. Drive it into that a little bit. And you can see here where this is where that your loop braces sometimes have to be extended because there's a bit of decay on there. Yeah, so I get like a fair bit of decay on this one. And this is also an opportunity to play with some extreme delay stuff. So you see how turn this down, kind of roll off very low end because it's probably just a bunch of mud and funk. Give a little boost here, but like what if we just... There you go. Oh. What is going on? Why did that? Oh, I see. I see. Let's try that again. Do like some manual effects there. There we go. This is like, call this one like Space Monkey. Why? I don't know, man. That's just the vibe that I'm getting. Doesn't have to mean anything. It's not that deep, as the kids say. I think kids say that. My kids don't say that. I don't know. Some kids somewhere might. All right, so delete all that. Is that an older video? I watch a lot of Jeremy's work. I'm a big fan. I think I have seen that. It's not like super recent, right? Like he did that a little while ago, maybe even quite a while ago. I think I have seen that. I think I have. Yeah, let's see. We could also try some... And when I'm trying, whenever I do these, like it's this, it's an opportunity also to figure out some of the effects that you don't use as often, things that you're not sure what the use for them might be. This is a good way to both figure that out and also then to build technique that you will then later do. So that just makes it nice and dirty sounding. Kind of a nice, almost fuzzed out vibe. This stuff like it feels like, yeah. And so a lot of times really what you are trying to do is alter the character of these in a way that is pleasing, interesting, you know? you can definitely feel free to use multiples of things, do things that you would never otherwise do. It's just the whole point is to find something interesting. Yeah, stacking saturators, stacking compressors, stacking multiband compressors can definitely get into, like, if you think of those things as being not very effects, if you stack them, like either before and after something, like here before and after this EQ. So the idea here, you get, if that first dirt and grit effect sort of takes a lot of the higher harmonics out, strips them out, and then the saturator adds some stuff back in, the EQ emphasizes some weird points of that, and then a second saturator hits that, and so all the harmonics stick in a different way, and then we'll run it through a bandpass filter with an envelope follower on it, and all of a sudden we got something pretty different here. I like to just keep all those cleaned up because otherwise you just get a bunch of stuff littering your track that you're like, what is this? And you have to figure out what it is later, and it just turns out it's trash, and it's just a waste of time. If you clean it up first, then you're good to go. This is moving right along. We are, so as you probably noticed from these other set, there's the original sample and then 5 variations, and we're almost at 5 variations and almost at an hour. So I guess this is going to work out pretty well. Again, would love if any of y'all have, ideas for effects that we should try. We have not tried many mod effects, so I guess we can do that. What if we do like auto pan? I know there's like a crazy, yeah, let's do like something like this where it's just like a crazy something really I feel like there's some really weird auto pan effects in here. Yeah, maybe like this, and yeah, okay. That's the shapes. This is like a weird, oops, we want to turn this off. How'd that get over there? So even though that's an auto pan effect, it's really acting like kind of a weird, interesting distortion. Flanger, yeah, we can do that for sure. Bit reduction, yep. Let's do both of those things. So flanger is right here. Let's do this warm preset and we can tweak from that. Ooh, that's nice. And a bit reducer. That's in drive in color. Yeah. So technically this, oh wait, we already, yeah, right. Let's just do synth byte preset. Let's try that. Oh, that's nice. So let's try that as 13-bit. Had a little jitter. Oops, sorry about that. I totally just hit my microphone. Apologize for the giant clump that I'm sure you all just heard. There we go. Let's see, what else can we do to make this enhance, huh? Well, that's kind of nice, actually. Got some weird... Let's see if we can capture. Looks like every other is a little more, to my ears, a little more interesting, so let's try and capture. Nope, that one was boring. That one's alright. That one's boring. Okay. I'll do that. Take this over here. We are cut this back a little and crank the gain. Gain. Another thing that I did not mention, well, I did mention it, but I guess maybe I just want to emphasize it, is if you are just getting started with digital audio, recording music in your bedroom, whatever, this is one of the best things you can do to build your skills, because you are simultaneously building your skills and your library. So your skills you're building up, just getting more comfortable using digital audio, exploring the capabilities of whatever program or programs you're using. Like I said, it's a good opportunity to, when you're working on a track and you sometimes you just want something different, but it's really disruptive to the flow of what you're doing to like sit there and just try different plugins over and over again. But if you've put in a bunch of hours doing sampling and exploring the options available to you, when it comes time to want something quote unquote different, you probably have something in mind. Maybe you've even saved your effects presets like I was doing here. And so you can just like pull up your one and be like, oh, this is like, that bit shred effect that we did. That was interesting. So let's see. So let's listen to the 5 that we made here. So this is what we started with. And so there you go. That was like, once, most of this was just me talking. We actually did those variations in 15 or 20 minutes. And that was even with some time for me talking. Justin, no worries about having to go back to work. It's all good. Thank you so much. Oh yeah, cool. Yes, learning the tools you have is definitely good meditation. Yeah, I will check out that FM operator in sampler, and maybe something we can talk about in the future. Next week, I think I'm actually going to do Intro to FM Synthesis, and I hopefully will have the actual FM Synthesis Level 1 lesson plan up for the How to Synth. It's mostly done. It's in revisions right now. I'm just trying to figure out what's going to go in part 2 and what's going to stay in part 1 and clean it up and make sure it makes sense, yada yada. So my day job has been, it's not a day job, my part-time paid writing gig has been taking a lot out of me. I'm also trying to buy a house right now. We're supposed to close on a house in 2 days, which seems completely unreal right now, but that's the plan. So yeah, I've got a lot going on, but if I don't finish the FM article, I'll probably do another one of these, maybe talk about some other techniques and some different approaches. This I was hoping was just kind of an intro to the way that I approach this, one way that I make samples. I'm going to release these samples as a sample pack, so I'll release all, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so that's like 36 samples, plus I'll do these sort of raw material ones as kind of bonus tracks. You can play with them yourself and, if you have an interest in playing with them, to see what kind of results you get, or just use them in your music, however you like. Yeah, okay, so I think that's pretty much it. I hope people found this useful. It's definitely a little different than the track by track breakdowns. Presumably I'll get better at these as well as time goes on. Thanks for coming by and hanging out. And if you have questions for this, or about this, you can leave them in comments. You can find me on social media, Etherdiver at Mastodon or at Blue Sky. That's going to be me. And you can just reach out to me there, tag me in your query, or tag it on the end to respond to one of these announcement posts, whatever, just some way that I'll see it. Requests as well, like if you're like, hey, actually, could you do a thing about making drum sounds via sampling, or pads, or whatever it is, sound effects that you want to do. Oh, I'm making a video game and I would love to know how I can use some freely available sounds to make the audio for my video game. I'm just something like that. I'm happy to do something like that. Just got to know that someone wants it and will find it useful. Okay, enough of that, enough of this. Thank you all so much for coming and hanging out. It's really appreciated. It's kind of a highlight of my week anymore. And I hope you all are finding it useful, interesting, and enjoyable as well. As always, this is available as a video on demand in like 30 seconds after I hit stop. So if you missed the beginning and want to catch up, you can do that. And otherwise, I'll see you online. Thanks again. See you in a week. Bye.